Artificial wreaths are a part of just about every home. But have you ever thought about constructing a living wreath? And that's what we've got here is a wreath that actually has cuttings of live plant material. And let me show you how to do this. It's really pretty reasonable in cost and pretty simple to do. The supplies that you would need are any kind of a wire wreath frame, and they're pretty easy to find at your hobby stores. You would also need some wire cutters, some snips to cut your plant material, wire, and this is just floral wire for wrapping the moss around it. Then you need your sphagnum moss, your pins to attach the moss to it, and we found that bobby pins work pretty good, but you can also use floral pins, and then any other decorations that you might like to add to the wreath where you're using dried flowers or a bow or anything like that. Now the most important thing that you use is the sphagnum peat moss, and again it's different from regular peat moss in that it's longer stems, it's a lot woodier in texture, and it's very dry and dehydrated when you purchase it. So the first thing that you need to do is put it in some water, and you're actually going to want to keep it moist the entire length or life of your plants. So you get a little bit of the moss, and you really need quite a bit to start with because it will flatten up as you wrap it. And you just try to hold it the best that you can on the wire, and then take your wire and wrap it around it. And I left a little extra so I can tie it to the wreath frame to start with. But you pull it pretty snug. And we've got a smaller one here, and it's a little bit harder to work with. And you'll squeeze a little bit of the excess moisture out. And again, I left extra to tie it in the back, but that is really the concept, and you would just keep adding groups until you wrap the entire wreath. Then you would try to wire it down as best that you can, and then the next step is to just add your plant material. Now we've got some different types of plant material. What you want to keep in mind is use anything that's real easy to root, because what you're doing is taking a cutting and you're placing it in the peat moss, and you're hoping that it will root for you, and then you'll keep it moist enough and it will eventually grow roots, and then you can keep it the entire summer. Now one of the things that we like to use are some of the scented geraniums because of the fragrance that they add. But you cut enough off of the stem, and if you have a bottom branch or leaf axis, you might need to break that off. And then what you do is you can either use your finger, I use some of the pins, but you make a hole, and then you insert that in there, cover it up as best you can with the moss, and then like I say, the bobby pins work best, and I pulled them apart so I didn't squeeze a stem, and then you just insert it to hold it in there. Now again, the floral pins will work, but these are a little bit too wide for us. And then you would just continue to do that around until you design your wreath. Now let me show you the one up here. You could use a culinary wreath, you could use any types of herbs. We've got some of the mint in ours. We've also used moneywort, which is a ground cover that we have here at the landscape gardens. And then our scented geranium. We've added a little bit of the dried flowers because we've got some purple color in this one variety of scented geranium to try to add a little bit of color and texture and contrast to it. Now we are displaying ours in full sun, and really that is not what you want to do. It's best to put these in really full or partial shade, at least afternoon shade, because you're going to need to keep this moss continually wet for those plants to go ahead and root on you. Now another thing that you may want to do initially is use any kind of a tray for your containers like I have here. It's real nice to work with, but what you can do is actually, when you've finished, if you match up the right size, display your wreath like this indoors by just setting on the tray, and it makes a nice centerpiece too, and it's a little bit easier to water initially. It's real attractive, and again, depending on what you choose, can be real fragrant. Now the cost for the particular one that I used here is about $12, and we have plenty of supplies left over to make another one even. So again, it's very reasonable, and it will last really as long as the plants root and until the freeze, unless we bring it inside. It will become root bound. You will lose a few initially because they won't root like most propagation occurs, but you can continually add or shape it throughout the season. So again, it's a fun project you might want to try, nice decorations, and it might be one your kids would be interested in too.